me, Anya, 24, living in a decent-sized city, working a barista job to pay the bills while figuring out what to do with my psychology degree. I considered myself pretty self-aware. I read a lot. I was online a lot. I knew about power dynamics, emotional labor, and the subtle ways society holds women back. For the last 2 years, I'd been with Kian. He was a good man. That was the problem. He was good in the way a sturdy, reliable appliance is good. He worked. He was consistent. He never broke down. His job was in IT, something with servers and networks. He was smart, but not in a flashy way. He didn't talk about disrupting industries or building an empire. He talked about getting a new certification to make his job more secure. Our life was comfortable. He paid his half of the rent on time, every time. If my car made a weird noise, he'd already be Googling it before I finished complaining. Friday nights were usually pizza and a movie on the couch. Saturdays we might go for a walk in the park or visit a museum if I pushed for it. He was kind. He'd listen to me rant for an hour about a rude customer or my manager's passive-aggressive comments. He'd rub my feet without me asking. He was stable, predictable, safe, and it was starting to feel like a cage. My friends and I would have these long talks over brunch or some cheap wine. We were all in our mid-20s, feeling that pressure to become something more. We talked about our careers, our ambitions, our futures. My friends were all striving. One was trying to launch her own online boutique. Another was killing it in marketing, always talking about the next big campaign. They'd talk about the men they were dating, guys who were entrepreneurs, artists, personal trainers with huge social media followings. Men who were exciting, dangerous sometimes, but always exciting. Then they'd turn to me. "How's Kian?" And I'd say, "He's good. He fixed my laptop yesterday." The table would go quiet for a second. That polite, slightly pitying quiet. I could see them thinking it. I was settling. The idea started as a whisper in the back of my head, but soon it was a roar. I was young, I was smart, I had potential. Why was I anchoring myself to someone so average? He wasn't pushing me to be better, he was just content. He seemed perfectly happy with our quiet little life. But I wasn't. I wanted more. I felt I deserved more. The internet just confirmed it. Every article, every post, every influencer was telling women not to settle, to know their worth, to demand a partner who matched their ambition. A man should be a partner in growth, not a comfortable piece of furniture. I started to see everything Kian did through this new lens. His quiet evening playing a video game wasn't him relaxing after a long day of work. It was a lack of drive. His contentment with his job wasn't stability. It was a failure of imagination. His kindness and willingness to listen weren't signs of a supportive partner. They were signs of a passive man, a people pleaser. He lacked a backbone. He was probably afraid of conflict. A classic sign of toxic masculinity, but the quiet, unassuming kind. The resentment built up over a few months. It was like a poison. Every time he'd ask, "How was your day, hun?" I wanted to scream, "It was boring, just like you, just like this life." Of course, I never did. I'd just smile and say, "Fine." The breaking point came on a random Tuesday. I'd had a particularly long talk with my friends the weekend before. They were telling me about a party they went to, filled with dynamic, interesting people. I'd stayed home with Kian to watch a nature documentary. I came home from work, tired and irritable. Kian was in the living room, headset on, playing some strategy game with his online friends. He saw me, smiled, and gave me a little wave, mouthing, "Hi, be done in a minute." And something inside me just snapped. He was 25 years old, and this was his peak excitement, talking to strangers on a headset while moving digital armies around a map. I stood there in the doorway, my bag still on my shoulder, and all I could see was my future, 30, 40, 50 years old, sitting in this same living room, watching this same man get older in front of a screen. I walked into the bedroom and started packing a bag. Not everything, just enough for a few days. He finished his game and came in, looking confused. "Hey, you okay? You seem quiet." I didn't turn around. I just kept folding shirts and putting them in my duffel bag. "Anya, what's going on?" His voice was starting to get a little shaky. He knew something was wrong. I finally zipped up the bag and turned to face him. I had rehearsed this in my head, but I hadn't planned on it being tonight. We need to talk, I said. The 4 words that kill any relationship. We sat on the edge of the bed. It felt like we were miles apart. I told him it wasn't working. I told him I felt stuck, that I needed to grow and I couldn't do it here. He just looked at me, completely blindsided. Stuck? I thought we were happy. What did I do? Just tell me what I did wrong and I can fix it. That made it even worse. His willingness to change, to bend himself into whatever shape I wanted. It was so weak. You didn't do anything wrong, Kian. That's the problem. You're not doing anything. You're just here. I tried to use the language I'd learned. I talked about our life trajectories being unaligned, about my need for a partner who challenged me intellectually and spiritually. He wasn't getting it. He was looking for a concrete problem to solve, like a bug in a piece of code. But I support you, he said, his voice cracking. I support whatever you want to do. You want to go back to school? I'll help. You want to start a business? I'm your biggest fan. What more do you want? I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed to end it, clean and quick. I want passion. I want ambition. I want a man who is building an empire, not just maintaining his little corner of the world. I looked him dead in the eye. I needed him to understand. I needed him to see that he wasn't enough. I just deserve better, Kian, more than this. I gestured around our small, neat apartment, the apartment he had so carefully helped me decorate. The color drained from his face. He finally understood. There was nothing to fix. I had judged him and found him wanting. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He just sat there, deflated. He nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. That was it. I picked up my bag and walked out. I didn't look back. The first few weeks were a blur of intoxicating freedom. I crashed on a friend's couch. It felt like an adventure. I told everyone my story. They were all so supportive. You're so brave, they said. It takes real strength to leave a comfortable situation for the unknown. I felt powerful. I had taken control of my destiny. I got my own small apartment. It was more expensive and less nice than the one I shared with Kian, but it was mine. I started going out constantly, to bars, to galleries, to parties. I was networking. I was putting myself out there. I updated my dating app profile, high-quality photos, a witty bio about smashing the patriarchy and seeking a co-conspirator for adventures. The attention was overwhelming, and I loved it. For the first time, I felt like I was the main character in my own life. After about a month of casual dates and meaningless conversations, I met Zane. It was at a rooftop bar, the kind of place Kian would have hated. Too loud, too expensive, too crowded. I was there with a couple of friends. He approached our table. He wasn't just handsome, he was magnetic. He had this easy confidence that radiated from him. Everyone in his orbit seemed to lean in a little closer. He introduced himself, completely ignoring my friends and focusing only on me. It was intense. He said he was an investor, mostly in tech and crypto. He used a lot of buzzwords I didn't understand, but he said them with such conviction that I just nodded along. He wasn't just talking about a job. He was talking about changing the world. He was an architect of the future. He was everything Kian wasn't. Ambitious, charismatic, a little bit arrogant. He was a challenge. He got my number, and he texted me before I even got home. Our first date was 2 days later. He took me to a restaurant I couldn't afford to even look at. He ordered for both of us without asking, but he picked perfectly. The conversation was thrilling. He asked me big questions. What was my ultimate dream? What did I want my legacy to be? I told him about my psychology background, my interest in human behavior. He didn't just nod along like Kian did. He engaged. He challenged my ideas. He called it intellectual sparring. I felt seen in a way I never had before. He told me I was different from other women, that I had a fire in me, that I was too smart to be pouring coffee for a living. It was everything I had been desperate to hear. The first month with Zane was a whirlwind. He was spontaneous. He'd text me in the middle of the day. Pack a bag. We're driving to the coast for the night. He was generous. He'd show up at my apartment with expensive gifts, a designer scarf, a rare bottle of wine, things Kian would have called frivolous. I was on a high. I had done it. I had left the boring stable guy and immediately upgraded to a top-tier man. I felt so smug. I would tell my friends about our latest adventure, and they'd look at me with envy. I had won the game. I rarely thought about Kian. When I did, it was with a sense of pity, Poor guy, still stuck in his little routine. I almost felt bad for him, but the cracks started to appear. They were small at first, easy to ignore. Zane was terrible at communication. He'd disappear for a day or two, then resurface with a casual, "Hey, crazy week, missed you." No explanation, no apology. If I tried to ask where he'd been, he'd get defensive. He'd say I was being needy, that he needed space to focus on his work. Powerful men are busy, Anya. You need to understand that. And I did, or I tried to. This was part of the package, the price of admission for dating a man of his caliber. He wasn't going to be at my beck and call like Kian was. He never wanted to just have a quiet night in. He always needed to be out, to be seen, to be performing. One evening, I was feeling down and just wanted to order takeout and watch a movie. He was visibly annoyed. He said staying in was low energy and that he needed to be around people to feel alive. He went out with his friends and I stayed home alone. It was the first time I felt a pang of loneliness since I'd left Kian. I pushed it down. This was growth. This was me learning to be independent even within a relationship. Then I got sick, a really nasty flu that knocked me out for a few days. I texted Zane, telling him I was feeling awful and wouldn't be able to see him that weekend. He replied with a sad face emoji and, "Feel better soon, lots of fluids." That was it. He didn't call. He didn't offer to bring me soup or medicine. He didn't check in to see if I was okay. I spent 3 days shivering in my bed, feeling miserable and completely alone. I couldn't help but remember the time I had food poisoning when I was with Kian. He had stayed home from work. He went to the pharmacy for me, made me plain toast, and just sat with me, making sure I was comfortable. I felt a flicker of anger toward Zane, but I quickly rationalized it. He was busy. He had important things to do. He probably didn't want to get sick himself, which was logical. It was my job to take care of myself. I was a strong, independent woman after all. I didn't need a man to be my nursemaid. But the excuse felt thin, even to me. I started noticing how he talked about other people, especially other women. Every ex-girlfriend he mentioned was crazy. One was a psycho stalker, another was a gold digger, another was unbelievably insecure. It was never his fault. He was always the victim of their emotional instability. At the time, I saw it as a good sign. It meant he had high standards. It meant he wouldn't tolerate drama. I felt special because I was the one who was different. I was the sane one, the cool girl, the one who understood him. He never introduced me to his core group of friends. I met some of his acquaintances at bars, but never the people he talked about as his real circle. When I asked about it, he'd say the timing wasn't right, or that they were a bunch of savages, and he was trying to protect me from them. It sounded chivalrous, but it felt isolating. My life was becoming all about him, but I was just a small, partitioned-off part of his. Our relationship was about 4 months in. It was intense, passionate, and deeply glamorous on the surface. But underneath, I was starting to feel a constant low-grade anxiety. I was always on edge, trying to be the perfect, cool, low-maintenance girlfriend he wanted. I never complained. I never made demands. I never let myself seem needy. I was performing a role, and it was exhausting. This wasn't the empowering partnership I had imagined. It was a tightrope walk. I was so focused on not falling that I didn't realize there was no safety net. And the fall was coming much sooner than I thought. The end with Zane wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a silent, sudden void. He had been talking for weeks about a big deal he was closing. It was all very vague, full of jargon about blockchain and Series A funding. He said it was going to be life-changing. He was more distant than usual, which I attributed to stress. I tried to be extra supportive, extra understanding. I gave him space. One Thursday, he texted me, "The deal is done. We're celebrating tonight at the Onyx Lounge. Be there at 9. Dress up." I was thrilled. This was it. He was finally bringing me into his world. I spent 2 hours getting ready. I did my hair, my makeup, wore the expensive dress he had bought me. I wanted to look like the kind of woman who belonged by his side. I got to the bar, and it was packed with the kind of slick, well-dressed people I'd only seen in magazines. I felt a little intimidated, but also excited. I found him holding court in a VIP booth, surrounded by a group of loud, backslapping men. He saw me, and a strange look crossed his face. It wasn't happiness. It was annoyance. He came over, not smiling. "What are you doing here?" I was confused. You texted me. You said to come." I showed him my phone. He glanced at it. Oh, right. Look, things are crazy tonight. It's business. Just grab a drink at the bar. I'll find you later. He turned and walked back to his booth without another word. He didn't introduce me. He didn't even offer to buy me that drink. I stood there in the middle of a crowded bar, completely humiliated. I felt like a stranger who had crashed a private party. I went to the bar and ordered a drink I couldn't afford. I watched him from a distance. He was laughing, celebrating, completely absorbed in his world. He never once looked in my direction. After an hour of feeling invisible, I quietly slipped out and went home. He never texted to ask where I went. I didn't hear from him on Friday or Saturday. By Sunday, my anxiety was through the roof. I broke my own rule and called him. Straight to voicemail. I texted him, "Is everything okay?" No reply. My rationalization started to crumble. He wasn't busy. He was ignoring me. A week went by. Nothing. It was like he had ceased to exist. I finally cracked and checked his social media, which I had always avoided because it felt needy. His latest post was from 2 days ago. A picture of him and another woman on a boat. The caption read, "Celebrating the next chapter with my number one." I looked at the woman. She was stunning, of course. She looked like an Instagram model, and just like that, it was over. There was no breakup conversation, no closure. I was just deleted. The emptiness he left behind was immense. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a crisis of identity. I had built my entire sense of self-worth around being chosen by a man like him, and he had discarded me like a piece of trash. For the first time, I felt the sharp, bitter sting of being used. The next year or so was a downward spiral. I jumped back into dating with a desperate, frantic energy. I was trying to fill the Zane-shaped hole in my ego. I needed to prove to myself that I was still desirable. But something had changed. The dating pool felt different now that I was in my late 20s. The men were more jaded. So was I. I went on countless dates. Dates with men who talked only about themselves. Dates with men who were clearly just looking for a hookup. Dates with men who looked nothing like their pictures. I kept comparing everyone to Zane's charisma or Kian's kindness, and no one measured up. They were all disappointing in one way or another. The conversations with my friends changed too. One of my best friends, the one who was always pushing me to want more, got engaged. Her fiancé was a high school history teacher, a nice, stable, kind man. He was, by all our old metrics, a Kian. When I pointed this out to her, she got defensive. "It's different," she said. "He's mature. He's emotionally available. He's a good person." All the things we used to dismiss as boring were now virtues. Another friend, the one with the online boutique, started dating a plumber. He owned his own small business. He worked with his hands. He was reliable. Slowly, my tribe of ambitious, independent women was pairing off with exactly the kind of men we had once sworn to avoid. They stopped wanting to go out to loud bars on Tuesday nights. They started talking about saving for down payments and planning weddings. I felt left behind. My stories of bad dates and flaky guys were no longer entertaining cautionary tales. They were just sad. I was becoming the single friend, the one they felt a little sorry for. I tried to focus on my career. I got a job as an administrative assistant at a corporate office. It was soul-crushing. The pay was better than the coffee shop, but I was just managing spreadsheets and scheduling meetings for other people who had actual careers. I was no closer to my own empire. In fact, I felt further away than ever. My late 20s were a wasteland of loneliness. I'd come home to my small, quiet apartment, eat a microwave dinner, and scroll through social media, watching everyone else's life move forward. I saw pictures of my old friends' engagement parties, weddings, baby showers. I saw pictures of Kian's friends getting married. I always had to look away quickly. I thought about Kian more than I wanted to admit. Not in a "I want him back" way, but in a "what if" way. What if I had stayed? Where would we be now? Probably living in a small house in the suburbs. Maybe thinking about getting a dog. The thought used to fill me with horror. Now, it just felt peaceful. I hit 29 and the desperation really set in. I felt like I was in a race against time. My standards, once sky high, had plummeted. My only real requirement for a man was that he was single and employed. But even that proved difficult. I was cynical now. I had walls up. I expected men to disappoint me, and somehow they always did. I was projecting my past experiences onto every new person I met. My worldview had hardened. I was convinced that modern dating was a rigged game. Good men were either taken or non-existent. The only ones left were the players or the weirdos. I became bitter. It was an ugly feeling, and I knew it was unattractive, but I couldn't shake it. I blamed everyone. I blamed men for being emotionally unavailable. I blamed my friends for abandoning me. I blamed society for setting impossible standards for women. I never blamed myself. It was always someone else's fault. 5 years. That's how long it had been since I walked out of that apartment. It felt like a lifetime ago. I was almost 30, still working a job I didn't care about, still single, still living in a small apartment that never quite felt like home. It was a Sunday afternoon a few months back. The weather was perfect, one of those early autumn days when the air is crisp and the sun is warm. I decided to go for a walk in the big park downtown. I bought myself an overpriced coffee and found an empty bench. I was doing what I always did, watching other people, couples walking hand in hand, families laughing and playing with their kids. I felt that familiar ache of loneliness. It was a constant companion now. Then I saw him. My heart stopped. It was Kian. He was walking down the path, not too far from my bench. He looked different. He was still recognizable, of course, but the years had been good to him. He was leaner, more muscular. His posture was better. He walked with a quiet confidence I'd never seen in him before. He had replaced his old nerdy glasses with more stylish ones. He looked like a man who was comfortable in his own skin. A grown-up. He wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a woman. She was holding his hand. She was pretty, but in a natural, understated way. She wasn't trying to be a model or an influencer. She was just lovely. She was laughing at something he said, her head tilted back, a genuine, joyful sound. He looked down at her with a smile that I had completely forgotten. It was a soft, loving, unguarded smile, the one he used to give me. A wave of something cold washed over me. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a profound sense of loss. They were getting closer. I had a split second to decide. Should I look away? Pretend I didn't see them? But it was too late. He looked up and his eyes met mine. For a moment, there was a flicker of recognition, and then his expression settled into one of polite neutrality. The look you give an old acquaintance from high school. They stopped in front of my bench. "Anya," he said. His voice was deeper than I remembered. "Hey, it's been a while." I had to clear my throat to speak. "Hi, Kian. Yeah, it has. How are you?" My voice sounded small and weak. "I'm great," he said, and it was obviously true. "Really good." He squeezed the woman's hand. "This is Elise." Then he looked at her and said the word that shattered the last of my delusions. "My fiancé." The word hung in the air between us. Fiancé. Elise smiled at me. It was a kind, genuine smile, with no hint of suspicion or triumph. "It's so nice to meet you," she said. I mumbled something back. "You too?" There was a brief, awkward silence. I was scrambling for something to say, but my mind was blank. Kian saved me from it. "Well, we should get going. Have a good one, Anya." "You too," I managed to choke out. And they walked away. They just continued on their path, resuming their conversation as if nothing had happened. For him, seeing me was a minor, momentary interruption in his happy life. I sat there on that bench, my coffee forgotten in my hand, and watched them go. I watched as he put his arm around her, pulling her close. It was all there. The comfortable intimacy, the shared jokes, the easy affection. Everything I had thrown away because I thought it was boring. He hadn't become a crypto millionaire or a world-famous artist. He was probably still working in IT. They probably still had quiet nights in. But he hadn't stayed the same. He had grown. He had built a life, a good life, the kind of life I secretly crave now more than anything. I sat there for a long time, until the sun started to go down and the air got cold. The thought I had pushed away for 5 years finally broke through. I had told him I deserved better. Staring at their retreating backs, I finally understood the truth. I was wrong. It wasn't me who deserved better. It was him, and he got it.